Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody to a post-Thanksgiving edition of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. Sorry we didn't record last week, but it was Thanksgiving. We were all tied up, and we figured we'd just take the week off. But I'm thankful for this podcast. I'm thankful for all the stuff MMA brings to my life in general. And I'm thankful for Jon Jones returning because there's so much to talk about when Jon Jones returning. But I'm also thankful that it's UFC Fight Week, pay-per-view edition. We're going to touch on that. We're going to touch on PFL. That was this past weekend. And there's a little bit of Twitter beefs going on. We'll dive into all that. But to help break it all down with me, follow him on X, JohnMorgan_MMA. His name is John Morgan. What up, pal?
Oh, I'm excited, man. I'm like you. You know, we had some tight schedules working last week, so we said, well, let's just roll it into the holiday. But, man, after I take 1 week away, I'm like, it has been too long since we got to get to talk some MMA with my boy E. Mac and UFC 310. I mean, look, so we got a lot to get to, but it's a pay-per-view fight week. And I know some people are kind of looking at this pay-per-view and saying some things. I'm
Boo
saying some
those
different
people.
things.
Boo!
I'm with you. I'm saying some different things, man. I'm fired up. I got a busy week ahead. I'm not going to get to partake in any of the UFC 310 festivities, but I will be back in Las Vegas on Saturday night to take in that fight card, and I'm excited about it. So with all that laid out, I toss it back to you to get things started.
All right. Well, let's get things started with PFL was just this past weekend, and it was their culmination, their tournament, and Dakota Ditcheva. Ditcheva.
There you go.
Am I saying it correctly?
Better get used to saying it.
Yeah, right. She's a star.
100%.
She is a star. She's a savage. As her quote was, I'm not a model, I'm a fighter. And I think that she could be that rising star that the PFL needs. And if you're asking me, the PFL needs somebody, right? Francis isn't there enough to be the guy, in my opinion, right? We saw what Ronda did for the UFC, what did for the women's division there. I don't think that she could ever get to a Ronda status, but that promotion needs a star. And, to us people here in America and, in the North America influence, there's a lot of foreigners over in PFL, right? A lot of Russians, a lot of people from, Europe that are a lot of dominating those cards. So to have somebody like her that you can be like, I just want to watch her. She's exciting. She's not a grinded out grappler type. She's somebody that's going to go in there, throw bombs, throw nasty elbows. I mean, she finished the fight with body shots this past weekend. She's a star, in my opinion.
You're 100% right. And finished a Tyler Santos who could conceivably be a UFC champion, right? I mean, went 5 rounds with Valentina Shevchenko. Extremely, extremely close fight. A lot of people thought Tyler won it. So that just goes to show you the quality and the caliber of the fighter that she is. Now, coming into this fight, I'll be honest with you, I was already a fan of Dakota, right? I mean, her fighting style is great. I mean, she's largely a striking fighter. She's aggressive with it, right? She's phenomenal on the mic as well. She's very fun. She's got the English accent, here in the Americas. We love the English accent as well. So she's got the whole package, right? But I did say, man, don't give everything to her just yet. This is a very, very stern, difficult test for her, but she passed the test with flying colors. So, I mean, I thought she was the favorite going in, but I thought this might be an opportunity for Tyler Santos to say, hey, maybe don't give her, all the flowers just yet. But my goodness, she looked absolutely incredible. Just dominated the entire fight, finished it in the second round, got on the mic and was fire as she always is. And look, I've had the chance to interview her a couple times. I've had the chance to watch her fight in person, which you well know sometimes you get a different read and feel on somebody when you watch them fight in person than you do on TV. And this woman just checks every box. Undefeated. That's a beautiful record at 14-0, just 26 years old. Training at American Top Team. I mean, my goodness, just the sky's the limit. And you're right, from a PFL perspective, they do need somebody that can do this, right? Because they did have a lot of like Russian champions crowned. And it's an interesting discussion. I mean, you and I, we always talk about the action side of things, but we talk about the business side of things as well, right? And man, this sport is not just driven by wins and losses. It's driven by marketable commodities, right? And
it's character driven, just like everything.
It really is. And so, when you've got somebody that's, a stoic champion that doesn't have a lot to say, that, even just, and again, I always want to make it clear, I'm not saying everybody in the world should speak English. They don't. I don't speak other languages, so I'm not going to judge anybody for not speaking a second language. But when you're talking terms of marketability, it's just easier to speak to the audience if it doesn't go through a translator on the way. You just lose a little something. So you needed somebody like this. And this is a great opportunity for Dakota and for the PFL. And at a time that it feels like they need it, because it does feel like there's some kind of negative energy around the PFL and Bellator right now with these two organizations coming together and kind of some uncertainty about the future. So it's nice to have that bright star to maybe hang the hat on as you build to 2025.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that I got to see her up close and personal. I was the replay official, actually, when she fought in Nashville. Didn't ref that fight, but I was the RO. And you know what? She got tested in that fight with a very high-level grappler and somebody who could take her down. So they did take her down. She got back up and she brutalized the poor girl, right? Now, fast forward to Santos, I was looking at this fight from a perspective of, yeah, she's the shiny new toy, right? She's she's the new toy. People want to talk about her, but she's going against a girl who has fought in the highest level in the world, tested them, maybe won, and is gone in the 5 rounds. You just go down the box and saying like why I think Tyler was going to win that fight, just because I can see all the attributes on one side with Dakota, but then I see what we have seen, the longevity in which it's been done. And then to come out there and just like put it all in a ball, chuck it to the side, and finish her with body shots, for crying out loud.
Vicious. Absolutely vicious. As you said, I think that like a lot of people had those same question marks. I know I did. Again, it's not doubt. It's just when you haven't seen it yet, you're like, looks, as you said, the fighter that's on the rise, but this is going to be the test. And when you pass a test in that fashion, dominant. There's no controversy. There's no, what if this had happened? It was just like, wow, that was the toughest fight you've ever had. You absolutely dominate every second of the fight. You finished it in devastating fashion. You've now put together back-to-back tournament-winning years, so you've had an insanely busy schedule. You put this money in the bank. It's unbelievable. And then again, like you said, you can't say enough for the mic skills as well, because that's a big part of it as well. Marketing and having some fun and as you said, character-driven and people getting to follow your story. She delivered there as well. So to me, just checked every single box. And this is somebody for PFL to build around. Now it's going to be really interesting to see kind of what they decide to do with her, right? Because, they have kind of two different models going on. You mentioned Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou, we always knew, was never going to come in and be part of a heavyweight tournament, right? That was never going to be the case for him. He was going to be part of this PFL super fight series. Now, do they want to use her in a specialized role where they're doing these featured matchups that are, only on pay-per-view?
As many eyeballs as many times as possible.
I agree. To be honest with you, I'd like to see her go back into another tournament just because it'll keep her busy, to be honest with you. I'd like to see her do it again.
That's how Kayla Harrison made her name.
That's it. And you can't do it forever. Fortunately, I talked to Kayla Harrison many times over the year, and during it and afterwards, she would always tell you, like, look, these schedules are tough to fight 4 times in, essentially like an 8-month period, because they don't start in January and end in December. Like it's a pretty rigorous schedule. Right. And so it's tough to do year after year. And I know she did it once at the regional level with the European League, and now she's done it at the global level. But I would say, listen, at her age and her experience level, I would like to see her go back into a tournament one more time as well, because I'm like you. And look, maybe you put her at the very top of every single card that she competes on. Maybe she's the main event every time she's out there, and you really get that push, because it feels like there's something bubbling beneath the surface, but she hasn't quite crossed over into that mainstream yet. But she has everything about her to allow her to do that. So I'm with you. I put her back in the tournament, and I fight her as many times as possible in 2025.
It's kind of interesting that you brought that up with her in specific minded, because my next thing on my notes was I was going to ask you about is, where does the PFL go from here, right? And the reason I asked that is that we had all this hubbub about the merger. We had all this hubbub with Francis Ngannou. And I could be wrong. Actually, I know I'm not wrong. I know I'm correct. There has been no traction for the PFL, right? And I have opinions on why I think. But where does Bellator go, or where does PFL, Bellator, however you want to put it, where do they go from here? How do they get on track? I'll just tell you one of the things, and me and you have talked about this off air a lot of time. It's the pacing. I said the pacing is brutal there, right? And I think it's hard for us to sit down and get invested in a card. One, where you don't know who the fighters are, but then the production and the sets and everything are amazing. I mean, world class.
Yes. Yes.
But then the pacing, I can only look at that backdrop so many times before I'm like, okay, when's this next fight gonna start?
Yeah, I agree with you. I had a chance to be at some of the events as you have in person, and their production, both in-house and on TV, is top notch. But the pacing is an issue. You know what I mean? And I know that they're aware of it, and I don't necessarily know who is making the decisions that we need to lengthen these cards, because I don't know a single fight fan that is like, man, I just need to see more video packages. That's what would really get me excited about this card. They want to see fights. You know what I mean? They want to get things on. You think about, remember when Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series came out and everybody just went crazy because they were like, oh my gosh, 5 fights in 2 hours on a Tuesday night? Like, you just run them back to back? I love it. And I think PFL should adopt that same model. I know they feel like they need to build the storylines. I get it. Like you said, they don't want you to not know who the fighters are, so they want to educate you more about the fighters. But I just think you have to do it faster. You're losing people's attention. Now, the other ththing, and it's funny that you started out by saying, where does Bellator go from here, before saying, I mean the combined PFL Bellator. Well, I think Bellator goes away next year, if we're being honest with you. I just, everything we've heard is it will not be around much longer. And I get it. To be honest, we talked about that from the beginning in the merger. It's impossible to run 2 different organizations simultaneously. You're essentially competing against yourself for fan awareness and for fan education and understanding. So that's fine. But what I hope is happening behind the scenes is that the reorganization is being ready to show us something spectacular in 2025, because you got a lot of fighters right now that are a little bit concerned that their dates keep changing, and the number of times they're fighting keeps changing, and they don't really know. So what I stand behind is I think PFL has delivered on everything they promised so far. When they came into the space, they were like, listen, man, we're going to build these season-long tournaments. We're going to award $1 million prizes. We're going to launch regional organizations all over the world, and those are going to help feed in. And from the beginning, it was like, man, that is awfully ambitious, but okay. Well, they've done it, and they've continued to do it. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they've got to get that figured out overall, just their overall structure. And then back to your original point, as far as the events themselves, they're so well produced and beautiful, but they just take too long, man. They've got to get the pacing speed, and they've addressed it. I've talked to their executives, and they said, we're aware of that. We're working on that. We're making it better. And maybe you can show me a statistic that'll show it was 8% better or saved 48 seconds this year or something, and say, see, we improved. But it's not enough, I think, to really make an impact. And I think that's got to be a focus for 2025. Speed these events up. Keep the action going.
Yeah, I have no complaints whatsoever. Actually, I love PFL, right? If I'm going to get to watch, fights on a Friday night too.
Oh, I love that.
Then I'm watching them, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, and especially the highest level fighters in the world, and giving other fighters options out there where they're like, I could go here or I can go there. I've known a couple people who have taken the PFL route, right? I know them personally. So I don't have a problem with anything that PFL is doing. Actually, I really like it.
I do too.
I just don't know what the answer is to pick up traction. And it could be that, the juggernaut of the UFC is just too much to overcome. That could be a simple answer. But the favors aren't being helped with the 3-hour broadcasting four fights.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I've said from the beginning, once they really started delivering these international leagues, that I know you don't want to just see the United States market. It's a big market, and there's a lot of advertising dollars and contracts and all those other things. And hey, if ESPN is paying money for your product and you want to continue to deliver it, but it is hard to compete with the UFC. It just is. I mean, I can tell you as a website operator for a lot of years, it doesn't matter what the organization is. It could be Affliction, it could be Elite XC, it could be Strikeforce, it could be Bellator, it could be PFL, whatever. It's all going to pale in comparison to the UFC. So you just have to be wary of that. But those international markets, I think, are where their real big opportunities are, when they can deliver prime time mixed martial arts action in these local markets where, you're not asking people to stay up till 5 a.m. or wake up at 6 a.m. to watch a fight card on a weekend. I mean, you can deliver to them in prime time. I think that's their real big opportunities. And, I think it's going to take time. But, Dakota Ditcheva is a perfect example of a homegrown talent, right? They identified her early in her career, gave her the platform on the European stage, then brought her to the global stage. And now you see she is one of the hottest names being discussed in the sport, behind the scenes. So now you just got to get that out in front of the public eyes. But again, as far as just overall getting people to tune in and watch, man, I agree. They just got to speed up the broadcast, man. They really, really do. And they do a beautiful job. Everything they do is phenomenally produced. It's top notch. It looks great. I just think it's got to go faster.
Yeah. There's just something missing, and speed is one of them. There's something else. I don't know what that is. At name value, who knows? But I think it's coming. They obviously have the investors and the backers. So, hopefully great things on the horizon, but they do have a superstar in their fold right now. But
indeed,
UFC 310, Las Vegas, Nevada, you will be in attendance. Sneaky, great card. This is a sneaky, great card. Yes, you look at the top of it, and Pantoja and Asakura. Not very many people know Asakura, who he is,
right.
But rising champion and knockout artist will stand and bang. But if we just go down the list, I mean, Shavkat, Ian Garry, and by the way, this has fight of the night written all over it, in my opinion. You got Cyril Gane, Volkov, Bryce Mitchell, Kron Gracie, Nate Lauder. I mean, has that guy ever been in a boring fight in the history of his life? No, this fight card, I promise you, is going to deliver. It's just got too many fun fighters on the card not to. That's why I just say it's a sneaky, fun, awesome card.
Look, we're going to break down the main card because that's what we do, right? But let's just eliminate the main card for a second, and let's just take a look at the prelims. Dominick Reyes versus Anthony Smith. Vicente Luque versus...
I thought that was the curtain jerker.
No, that's the prelims. Dominick Reyes versus Anthony Smith. Vicente Luque versus Tim Agrimbo. Now, that was supposed to be Nick Diaz. We could have that discussion as well, but,
Aljo is on the prelims.
Aljo and Mozart Evloev is on the prelims. Randy Brown, Brian Balgobin. Look at Chris Weidman. I know he wanted to fight at Madison Square Garden, but there he is with Air Games. Cody Durden, Joshua Van. We talked to Cody Durden for Grind City Media. He's fired up. He said he's ready to F Joshua Van up. He was fired up. We didn't get a chance to check out that interview. We're still going, baby. Michael Chiesa and Max Griffin, Clay Guida and Chase Hooper, Kenny and Njeku versus Lucas Brzeski. I mean, that's the prelims. Now we can talk about the main card. So I agree with you. I get the feeling that, I don't know, maybe coming off the heels of Madison Square Garden, maybe, losing a title fight, that a lot of people are just kind of looking at this card and going, ho-hum, look at this offering the UFC's got for me in Las Vegas. I just disagree, man. I think this card looks spectacular, and super busy week ahead for me. The only thing, like I said, I'll get to do is be there on fight night, but man, what a fight night it is, and I'm looking forward to showing up at T-Mobile Arena on Saturday.
Yeah, now, going back up to the top of the card, because we'll start there. But, honestly, I think we could spend more time on a couple of these other fights. But, Pantoja and Kai Asakura, not a lot of people know Asakura.
Yep.
The guy cracks. He says he can one-hitter quitter Pantoja. But the thing about Pantoja is, you gotta one-hitter quitter him, because the guy, even though he's going to look like he's exhausted in the second or third round, he will not stop coming.
I love this fight a lot. So, we just talked about the fact that the PFL and Bellator was struggling to gain traction. So how would a guy, Kai Asakura, that's fighting in an organization based in Japan, have a big following? And I understand that. And so I think the UFC is taking a risk here, right? They understand that this is commercially a difficult assignment for them. Now, they tried to get him in a number one contender fight to bring him in on his debut. That didn't work out, so they ended up putting him right into a championship matchup. but this dude is exciting. And he's a star in Japan. I mean, he's absolutely over with the fans in Japan. He's an absolute superstar there. And if you've never watched him fight, you will like his style. He is aggressive. He is exciting. As you said, he can crack. He does have that one-hitter-quitter power. And so I think it's going to be a really, really fun fight. But it is a terribly tough assignment. I mean, obviously, you're coming in fighting for a UFC title. It's going to be a tough assignment. Pantoja just keeps getting better and better and better. It's also interesting, too. Pantoja training an American Top Team. One of his teammates is Kyoji Horiguchi. Of course, Horiguchi is another star that maybe people kind of remember being in the UFC, kind of don't. But he's had a couple of fights with Kai Asakura. They knocked each other out. So I think that's interesting because American Top Team has prepared for specifically for Kai Asakura, and they have lost once to Kai Asakura. So I think that makes you take the challenge even a little bit more seriously than you might have had you been victorious. So that's interesting. And then from the Kai Asakura's perspective, it's intriguing as well. Japan, despite being an epicenter of mixed martial arts for so long, the home of pride, the number of talents that they produce, has never had a UFC champion. So this is not only a chance for Kai Asakura to take his superstar status in his homeland to a different level, but the UFC, exactly, right? The UFC has struggled to really gain a foothold in Japan over the years. If Kai Asakura is their champion and they can go back over to Saitama Super Arena and put on an event with him in the main event, all of a sudden you just sold the place out. So there's a lot riding on this fight, and I think there's a lot of intrigue in it. And take all that stuff out of the equation and just say that what these two dudes going in there and fight is going to be like, it's going to be a hell of a fight.
Yeah, Asakura never's gone past 3 rounds, though, in his whole career.
Yeah, and you know what? Here, so that one scares me. And the other thing that scares me is he's been fighting at like 134 over there, right? He hasn't been fighting at 125, so he's got to make that cut down. You know, I don't know what the conversations were like. I gotta think the UFC was looking for some guarantees as well. Like, you're sure you can make 25, right? Like, we're not confusing this kilograms to pounds conversion here. You know what we're talking about. You know, I'm assuming he'll make the weight. You know, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of money on the line. You know, so I'm assuming he'll make the weight. But anytime somebody changes weight classes, which that's kind of what I feel is happening here. You know, how does that impact them? How does that affect them? I don't know. So that's something to think about.
Yeah. Listen, I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot of things about, you know, who he is. You know, the thing about Pantoja as well is the guy's a dog, but we've never seen him overly hurt. We've seen him tired, which he looks tired all the time, and he just drives through it. You know, the man's
got 2 kids at home, man. I saw him on the countdown. He's got 2 kids at home. Of course, he's always tired.
Yeah, dude, you're preaching to the choir there, John. But with that being, I just think we're going to learn a lot. I mean, we're going to learn. I can't recall Pantoja just like looking like he got drilled by a shot and it completely altered his universe. You know what I mean? Because anytime he got drilled against, you know, Mighty Mouse, or not Mighty Mouse, by Moreno or whoever else he's fought, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to dive in for this takedown. I'm going to get it, and then I'm going to control you on the ground and make you miserable. So, but I don't think anybody he's fought has got this type of power either. Because he has been hit in exchanges. It just never seemed to affect him. So now if he's willing to put himself in that pocket to get a takedown, but he gets cracked by a big power with Asakura, who knows? I'm excited. I think we're going to learn a lot from this fight too.
I do too. And I think you laid it out perfectly. I mean, Pantoja in his UFC run, all his losses came via decision, and he's fought, you know, some of the absolute best in there. He's racked up a lot of wins. I mean, this run that he's on right now is unbelievable. I mean, Usyk, Royval, Moreno, Perez, Royval again, Kopp. I mean, those are some big names that he's defeated to get to his current status. But I mean, it seems that, like, you know, the guy can crack. I mean, that's all I can say. Kai Asakura has that game-changing potential with his power that he brings to it, and so he can switch up everything in a heartbeat, in a moment. He seems to only be getting better as well. This is dangerous for Pantoja, but again, I think Pantoja has that respect for him as well. That's why I don't think Pantoja in any way will be overlooking Asakura whatsoever. Especially, again, one of Pantoja's main training partners is Kyoji Horiguchi, who, of course, has the loss to Asakura as well. So that, to me, really amps up the intrigue because I'm not worried about, you know, not that I think Pantoja would do this anyway, but, you know, sometimes you could say, this guy's never fought in the UFC. He doesn't know what he's in for. I'm on a different level, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think Pantoja and his team are taking that way at all. Now, here's another interesting fact as well. I mean, just another little caveat to it as well. Not like a little known factor, but Asakura's been fighting in a ring. It is different. Fighting in a ring and fighting in a cage is very different. I don't know with the and I don't know with the way he fights if it necessarily changes too much. I mean, obviously he's just looking he'd like to be in the center of whatever surface he's at and just throwing bombs, but it is different. I mean, the exchanges up against the ropes versus up against the cage are completely different. You can utilize them differently, both offensively and defensively. So there's a lot of wrinkles to this. So I love this fight. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be incredibly intriguing. And, there's big potential ripples in this on either side.
I'm looking at this card now. And I don't know. I said Shavkat and Ian Garry, potential fight of the night. I still believe it. Cyril Volkov, potential fight of the night. Bryce Mitchell and Kron Gracie. Listen, we were saying not 3-4 years ago that Bryce Mitchell is the modern day Damian Maia in a smaller weight class, which is still accurate in my opinion.
I agree.
Taking on Gracie.
All right. Here's what I'm hoping. Here's what I'm hoping. What we didn't get with Bo Nickel and Paul Craig, we get with Bryce Mitchell and Kron Gracie. You know what I mean? Like I want these two to hit the mat. Like, and I know that happens. Look, we see that a lot. Two talented grapplers, whether it be wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever. A lot of times they'll just say, hey, let's turn this into a stand-up fight because I don't want to engage there. But I don't know. These two to me, I don't know. They just seem like the kind that they go out there and they're going to be willing to put on that show for us. So I love this. I thought this matchmaking was beautiful. I saw a lot of people didn't like the matchmaking just because of where Bryce Mitchell stands. Yeah, I love it, man. People were talking about, hey, the rankings and Gracie's layoff, and I get all that, man. But if we're just talking about, hey, man, you're sitting in the matchmaking room and you get to play mad scientist, right? You get to do that fantasy stuff where you're playing the UFC video game and you're like, I don't care what the rankings are. I don't care what, we just taking two guys and putting them together. We want to see. I thought this was it. So I love the matchmaking here on this one, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know which one I want to break down. So I guess we'll do a little bit of each one. Rakhmonov and Ian Garry. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is a very bad matchup for Shavkat. It's a bad matchup for him. Ian Garry with his length and his size, right? He's very hard to take down. I know people are on this, Shavkat train, and I'm on it too. But he's looked very beatable in his last couple fights. And you got a guy, Ian Garry, who people love to hate because he's so brash and he's this, but the dude can fight. He is not scared of the fight, but he almost pisses you off about how smart he is fighting too, right?
And that he doesn't mind and that he doesn't mind telling you about how smart he is as well, right?
Yeah, he doesn't mind telling you. But I just think this is a tremendously bad matchup for Shavkat. Like, I know everybody's on that train. And I am too. I'm the first person that I think that has come out and said, listen, this ain't a good matchup for him. Right now, short notice, like it's just not.
It's really interesting you say that because I do agree that very few people give Ian Garry a fair evaluation of his skills, right? I believe very few people are able to separate the personality from the fighter and give an honest assessment. I think you and I have always been able to do that. We've always been very high on Ian Garry. It just to go so far as to say it's a bad match. Now, let me ask you this. The fact that it's a 5-round fight, does that change your opinion? Because I actually think a 5-round fight probably leans more towards Ian Garry, even though, there's been some questions. I just don't know, like Shavkat, the pace and the aggression, never been to a judge's decision, right? So we don't even know what he looks like the end of 3. We've seen it close to the end of 3, but we've never seen the full end of 3. And how does he look at 4 and 5? Not that we've seen a lot of it from Garry either, but when I think about Gary's pace, I think about him being smart. I think about him being poised. He'll pick you apart, even if maybe he's not giving you the most exciting fight. And even if the crowd's trying to urge him not to fight his style, he's going to continue to fight that style. But I also just think can you stay away from him for 5 rounds? Not that you don't want to engage in all, but I think Ian Garry probably wants to fight long and fight and use that range, right? I don't think he wants to fight on the inside in this fight. Are you able to do that for 25 minutes if necessary? I don't know. I'm super intrigued by this, and you're right. I don't think I've heard anybody say that it's a bad matchup for Shavkat. Now you got the brain reeling a little bit as I think about these styles matching up.
Listen, he has looked impressive his whole career. Neil Magny gave him probably a lot more difficulty than most people thought.
Right.
Jeff Neal gave him a lot more difficulty than most people thought. Now, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, awkward for everybody. So, like, almost take that and throw it out the window, right? And he got the finish. He got the finish in all of these, right? I look at those names and saying it took him a while to solve even the striking riddle on these guys, to get his hands on them, to get them down to the ground, to get the finish. Now I look at that with, Ian Garry, who I think is on a different level. And I just look at it, and he's everybody wants to take him down. Nope. Ian Garry ain't getting taken down. Like, he doesn't get taken down very often, right? I just think that when you look at these two, 15-0, 18-0, I don't know why. I think people just don't like Ian Garry personally, and why they're kind of discrediting him. What's the line on this? Do you have the line in front of you?
It is significantly in the favor of Shavkat Rakhmonov. UFC.com, I don't have best fight odds pulled up right now. UFC.com has it -360, which I believe is absurd. I think that line is absurd.
I believe that's absurd. Like right now, I think both of these guys have, world championship credentials to them, or future world championship credentials to them. I think they could. Dare I say, I am leaning towards Ian Garry in this fight.
I don't have a problem with that, to be honest with you. I think it's intriguing. I mean, yeah, it's interesting to see, man, people bet Shavkat, they put money on him even when he opened at -290. They continue to lay money on him all the way down to like -380 right now, and still shifting that direction. Listen, you got to think there's at least some reputational discussion in those lines, right? Because everybody's been talking about Shavkat since he came into the UFC is like, oh, that dude is going to be a champ, right? Like undefeated, all finishes, exciting, aggressive. So I get it, right? You know what I mean? If you're like, this is the guy right here. And Ian Garry, for whatever reason, man, people just love to hate on Ian Garry, man. They really do.
He's a jerk. He's in the nicest way. He can be such a D-bag to people. And the way he talks and the arrogance that he has is all the reasons I love him.
I love him, dude. I like Ian Garry a lot, man. He's had to grow up in front of the public's eye, that's for sure. It's an interesting point. It's so funny when you talk about their track records, right? Because, Ian Garry fought Magny and Neal as well, and then he fought Wonderboy instead of Stephen Thompson, which, he fought MVP instead of Wonderboy. So it's like, those same similar styles. So I don't know, man. It's I'm intrigued by this. I really think it's a phenomenal fight. I'm intrigued by how much you feel that Garry is there, because I see past the victory for both. To me, this is a coin. This to me is a coin toss matchup, and I think it's all just going to come down to A, who's able to dictate how the fight plays out, and B, who's able to dig the deepest if it goes late, as I kind of expect it to do, to be honest with you.
And here's the reason: I'm not saying that Ian Garry is the favorite in my opinion.
Right.
What I am saying here is everybody is saying Shavkat is, right?
Right.
And I'm seeing as many paths to victory. The ground. Let's start here. Who do you think is the better striker?
Technically speaking, I'd say Ian Garry, to be honest with you.
Okay. Do we have their length at hand? He fights very long. Yeah. I know Shavkat's not a small guy, though. You know what I mean? So I'm just kind of curious.
Definitely not. Wow. 77-inch reach for Shavkat Rakhmonov, 74.5 for Ian Garry. So we talk about the length of Ian Garry, and really, Shavkat will still enjoy a 2.5-inch reach advantage.
But he's 2 inches shorter, which is ironic.
Right. Yep.
Right. Okay.
He's got those long arms.
He's got long. That still doesn't change the fact that I think Ian Garry is the more polished.
I agree.
Striker, right?
I agree.
So I think and I know that Shavkat is going to be the one doing the chasing, in my opinion, in this fight.
Yes.
And I really think that with how technically proficient that Ian Garry is, like, it's going to pose problems. It's going to take a while to infiltrate that to eventually. Now, I think we're going to clearly say that if Shavkat gets him on the ground, I think Shavkat wins it all day. But that's a big if. When has Ian Garry been dominated on the ground either?
No, and I'm just looking at their grappling stats as well, and I'm a little bit shocked to see that Shavkat's takedown accuracy is only 29%. So, I mean, that's not a high rate for takedown accuracy. The defense for Ian Garry is 69%, but I agree with you there. And when I think about it that way, that I think Ian Garry is going to be. I mean, Ian Garry is, and when it comes to breaking down a fight, and we talk about fight IQ and discipline to maintain a game plan, regardless of what people, again, how the crowd may be reacting and anybody else, like, he will stick to exactly what he believes is going to work against an opponent.
Ask MVP.
Exactly, 100%, and that's exactly what I think of. And so, man, to be honest with you, I think this conversation may have swayed me a little bit. You know, going in, I thought it was more of a crapshoot, but man, Garry just, I think I see what you're saying is that I'm not saying that, you know, Ian Garry is absolutely 100% the guy to beat Shavkat Rakhmonov. But if you're, like I say sometimes, if you're looking to build a guy to beat somebody, he might be the guy. He might have the set of skills and the frame that you want. Because I don't know that you necessarily want somebody to, like, go in there and just engage as aggressively and quickly as possible with Shavkat, because he's shown himself to be pretty well in exchanges like that. You probably want to be a little bit polished, hang out on the outside, distance management, range, all those things, and Ian Garry is certainly capable of doing that.
How long ago did this fight get announced?
Just a couple weeks ago.
Ian Garry sees something in this. He's got too much to lose to take a short notice fight on essentially 3 weeks notice. I think he sees what I see in potential there as well. I think he sees it. Boy. I think that Shavkat, and I'm going to go back to what I said about Dakota earlier, he's been this shiny toy and well deserving, right? The guy is just amazing. But as amazing as all of his finishes have been, I think there's always been, but there's something more, or that wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, or there's always been a little bit something. I think Ian Garry has the IQ. I thought length. I was wrong. But the IQ and the discipline, that's the key. The discipline to get this done. You know, that's where I'm at with this.
It's interesting too, because I think that's a pretty savvy point, because Ian Garry, everything he does is calculated, right? Like, he doesn't strike me as the, yeah, whatever, let's go. You know, it's very, how does this path work? How does it, you know, where do I see all, he's very calculated his decision-making processes and how he's managed his career. In fact, I always loved it. And some people hated it, but I loved it when he was on his way up and he would say, well, you know, I plan on breaking into the top 15 and then I'll fight 14 and then I'll fight 13. And then I'll fight, you know what I mean? He's like, I want to take those little baby steps, those little incremental steps, and work my way up the chart. He and Shavkat do have a history, trained together at Killcliff. Now, how much you can take from training sessions, I don't know. But when you said he knows something, and I'm not one that overly puts value into training sessions from 3 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you know a little something. You know, maybe you know a tendency, or maybe they showed you that one go-to move that you've seen them use a couple times. You kind of know how they set it up, but that's a training session. It's not a real fight. And, you know, these two guys are both evolving astronomically since then. But it does make you wonder, because I feel like he's calculated in everything he does. And for him to say, yeah, I'll take this, because Shavkat, and listen, should say the same thing for Shavkat. Again, just like I said off the top, Shavkat should have said, I'm not fighting that undefeated guy. You were already giving me a title shot. Like, I'm sitting out until Bilal Muhammad's ready, and I'll take my title shot. He said, I'll take this fight too. So they both deserve it. But you're especially right with Ian Garry. I find that interesting. I think that may have been it. Now, that, you know, that doesn't change the X's and O's of the fights, but that sure is like a mental, psychological caveat that I hadn't considered before.
Yeah, either way, I think minus 380 is a little ridiculous.
I think that's crazy. I do too. I mean, I don't think you'll ever get Ian Garry that kind of plus money again for the rest of his career. So if you're an Ian Garry believer, you might want to load up. Even though, look, to me, this could be a pick'em fight. I mean, this is dangerous. I love it. This is a great.
And that's where I'm at. It's a pick'em fight for me. That's why I say it's a difficult. I think it's a difficult matchup. I think this is by far the biggest step up in competition for Shavkat as well. I need to pull up his record just to make sure. But
you're 100% right.
Yeah.
I mean, I go through the list. Stephen Thompson, Jeff Neal, Neil Magny. You talked about all those. Before that, it was Carlston Harris, Michelle Prazeres, Alex Oliveira. All tough season fighters, but not on that championship trajectory, that championship caliber. So this is a huge step up for Shavkat as well. There's absolutely zero question about that.
Right. So, anyways, give me. This is such a fun card that I don't even want to necessarily go down. I guess we kind of already talked about Bryce Mitchell and Kron Gracie. Any other fights that you want to talk about here? Because I mean, literally, we could talk about Nate the Great and Doho Choi. They're just going to stand in the middle and just slam each other's heads against their fists. Or Dominick Reyes, Anthony Smith. That's a very interesting fight. Cyril Gane, Volkov. I don't know. Which one do you want to talk about?
I mean, listen, in terms of immediate stakes, I think Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov is the biggest one because you're talking about potential, maybe not number one contender matchups because we know what we still got out there in the heavyweight division. But this is a very important fight.
It's the number one contender matchup.
It is, I 100%. I think it is. I mean, we just, we know. I guess if we're considering that we got an interim champ out there right now in Tom Aspinall, I mean, we know that he's potentially got next, depending on how things shake out with John Jones.
I think the winner of this fight's Tom Aspinall.
I agree 100% with you. So that's a big one, and I think it's a big one for Cyril Gane, who it's funny. I watched the countdown. A lot of times I don't get to watch it till later in the week, but I actually watched the countdown, and I thought it was so interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet.
I've read some excerpts, but I did not watch it.
Boy, I loved the fact that Cyril Gane came out and said that against John Jones, he just didn't show up. You know what I mean?
That's what I read.
He just owned it. I love that because we saw it, right? I mean, you and I were both like, this guy wasn't even there, and you don't want it to sound like an insult.
Has he ever grappled a day in his life?
Yeah, so you couldn't see it, so that was interesting. But so I love that one. But I'll tell you what. You touched on Anthony Smith, Dominick Reyes. I mean, that's a very, very important fight for two guys that are just kind of on the outside of the rankings. And I think Anthony Smith, the veteran stud, I mean, great analyst, great commentator, has kind of come to grips with, I believe my title chances are over, but still wants to put on some good fights and bank some money for his family moving forward. Meanwhile, Dominick Reyes, I mean, my goodness, the biggest what if in UFC history. If he had been granted the win over John Jones, which many people felt he won, and then he went on that losing streak. That's unbelievable. Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling is intriguing. But I'll tell you, just for sheer fun value, I'm loving these early prelims, man. Clay Guida and Chase Hooper, I mean, they grappled each other in Fury Professional Grappling, so that makes it a little more fun. Now they're going to go do it in MMA for real. But listen, I don't know how many more years Clay Guida can keep fighting, but anytime I get a chance to watch Clay Guida fight, I will. And Chase Hooper finally seems to be coming into his own with the striking as well. Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin, I love that. Two veterans of the sport as well. But it might be just because I did interview Cody Durden, and he was extremely fired up and a little bit derogatory about Joshua Van. But I think those two dudes are just going to go out there and throw down as well. So I tell you what, man, you said sneaky good card. It's funny because most cards you look at, and there's a fight or two that you're like, oh, yeah, we got that one on there. I don't see any fights in here where I'm like, there's no storyline, there's no interest. Like, how did they even come up with this fight? Like, everyone in here, I'm like, okay, that could be a lot of fun. It's got some intriguing angles to it. Man, I feel like there's just going to be a lot of fun things to talk about after this card is over. I think
Dominick Reyes, in my opinion, how impressive he looked, in his last performance, and I'm not going to say rallying, but just in the the brutalness that his fight was before coming out, getting it. I think this is a long way of saying I think Dominick Reyes right now, with a great showing, that this can then give him that boost again. I think this 100%. Guy is so talented. He has always been talented. He was hurt. He got, even though he may or may not have beat Jones, he lost to Jones. Then he goes off of Jan Blachowicz, Yuri, and then the Ryan span, to him saying he was fighting hurt. He was fighting a lot. He was trying to recapture that. He took a lot of time off. I mean, he took almost 2 years off and then came back and fight Dustin Jacoby. And now I think he's one fight away. And I think this is the perfect opponent for him to do this with, because I still see a lot of upside with Dominick Reyes. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I mean, athletically, obviously, Dominick Reyes is special. And, the fight versus John Jones, I scored ever so slightly for John Jones, but it was one of those fights where if you say you had it for Dominick Reyes, I won't argue with you. It was that damn close. But you think about the spiral that he went into after.
John Jones, who gave a young upstart the next big thing an opportunity. That fight?
Well done, sir. Well done, sir. I like that. But look, how could you not, right? To be that close to unseating the GOAT and to feel like you had done it, man, it's hard to rebound from that, right? I mean, that's the highest level of the sport you can possibly get. For it not to go your way, I'm sure was soul crushing for him. You know what I mean? And so then to have the spiral that he went on with ended up being 4 consecutive losses. You're right. That win against Dustin Jacoby, that was career saving. Let's just be honest with you. He loses that fight, and I just don't know where you go from there. You know what I mean? Especially after the time away and all that. That was career saving. And now you got Anthony Smith.
22 all the way until just June.
Correct.
And he's healthy again. He jumped right back on the horse, which leads me to believe I'm seeing something again. I
agree. But it's funny too, because I hadn't looked at the odds for that one either, man. The odds makers are seeing something there too. Dominick Reyes minus 340, man, against Anthony Smith, who, I mean, as seasoned of a veteran as they come, but has had some tough results lately. And obviously, again, he's got commentary and analysis going on and all those. So how much is every day spent solely on training, and just at some point the miles add up. You know what I mean? He's 37-20. I mean, we don't see a lot of records like that anymore. Not to mention, I think he said that he's got some in there that didn't quite make it to his record. Some old fights in a bar, in a barn and stuff.
Home invader, but
yeah. Oh boy, yeah.
A D1 wrestler, mind you.
That one should count too, man. That was one of the oddest stories you'll ever heard of. So no, that's a big fight, man. That's a really, really big fight for both men, I think. Because again, I heard some interviews after his last fight where Anthony Smith kind of resigned himself to the fact that that was probably the last chance for me to really make a championship run. I'm 36 years old. I'm closer to the end than the beginning, so it's probably not there for me. So does his motivation wane? Does he not get up for the fight the way he used to, knowing that now I'm just kind of here, just kind of having some fights? Who knows? That's a really big one. As you said, Nate Landwehr against Doo Ho Choi, I mean, just get the checks ready for him. Just get the checks ready for him. You know what I mean? Like, those guys come out there and fight. So
I'm just going to be sitting on my couch just like this.
Oh, 100%. Those dudes are all action every single time. I'll tell you another one is probably the one that's, because then you start talking about names like Chris Weidman and Eric Anders, and obviously the rescheduling.
Which I think is fun. That's a fun
great fight. We were looking forward to it at Madison Square Garden. It was unfortunate. But I'll tell you one that's probably getting the least discussion out of anything I've heard, but Randy Brown versus Brian Battle might be a lot of fun, man. Randy Brown, came to the UFC so early in his career and has really, really, truly just grown up in front of our eyes, and his game continues to develop. And I think he's in a really great spot now in his career, and he's on a nice little win streak. Meanwhile, Brian Battle,
the Butcher.
The Butcher, man. He's no longer Pooh Bear. He's the Butcher. I'll be honest with you. I probably was one of those guys that coming off the Ultimate Fighter, I was like, I don't know if I'm 100% sold of where this guy's ceiling is. And now I'm sold. You know what I mean? Now I'm sold. This guy is going to be in some fun fights, man. He is dangerous. So that's a fun fight. So yeah, it's give it the big boo off the top. You know what I mean? This card is full of intriguing fights. I think it's going to be exciting pretty much from start to finish, man.
You have the potential of Bryce Mitchell and a Gracie on the ground. Then you have, this 6'7" juggernaut of Volkov and Cyril Gane, another Muay Thai amazing striker. Imagine the punches that are going to be thrown there. The chess match of Shavkat, Ian Garry, not to talk about Pantoja up top. Dominick Reyes trying to research. Vicente Luque, Aljo is on the undercard. I mean, this is okay. It's not even sneaky good card. This is a phenomenal card.
It really is.
If you took off, if you took off that main event, or even if we would have put Asakura, took him off and put Brandon Moreno in there just for the name, this would be a juggernaut card.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and see, that's what's interesting about, because you're 100% right. Like, let's go back to having the welterweight title fight where it was. Now, there would be some people saying, well, Bilal Muhammad, he's not the most exciting everywhere, but it'd be a second title fight. And then, like you said, taking a more recognizable name at the top of the card in the flyweight division. I think people are talking completely different about this card, but you can't tell me that Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Garry is any less intriguing of a fight than Shavkat and Bilal Muhammad would be. In some ways, it might be even more intriguing. You know what I mean? And the same to be said with Pantoja versus taking, I mean, Pantoja has been ripping through everybody, facing the best of the best. And now you get this, mystery man coming in here that you don't know about, and what kind of impression is he going to have? I mean, so
old manager being like, I got a mystery opponent. Come on down.
Come on down. So you can't tell me it's any less intriguing. So I love it. Like I said, I'm got a busy week this week. So I've got, I'll be calling Tough Enough here in Las Vegas on Wednesday night. And then Thursday I fly to St. Louis because I'll be calling
Wednesday card.
Yeah, they're doing a Wednesday. There's just so much going on because you've got, man, in Las Vegas is what I mean. Okay, by the way, if you happen to be in Las Vegas this week, you've got Tough Enough on Wednesday night. You've got the Fight Pass Invitational grappling on Thursday night at the Apex. You've got Power Slap on Friday night at Fountain Blue, and then you've got on Saturday night the UFC. So I mean, there's just stuff happening every single night here, which is incredible to see. So Wednesday night card at the Virgin, and then Thursday night is actually the World MMA Awards, which is also another thing to do here in town. I'm bummed I can't be there for that because I love being at the World MMA Awards. But I'm flying to St. Louis because we do have CFFC match day on Friday. Bro, get to call the Iowa Hawkeyes. I mean, you're talking about as good as Division I wrestling gets. Obviously, Penn State is the one that has been at the top of the sport.
Yeah, there's the Blue Bloods.
They really are, man. So we get to see them against Army and Princeton, which should be two great matches. So I'm looking forward to that. Justin James will actually be on the mic with me. It's kind of cool. Justin James actually was one of my. What's that?
They having the women at all?
Not at this duel. No, not at this duel.
See Frank Trigg's daughter.
Frank Mir, I know, right? It would be amazing to see. So we'll see if we get some more women's matchups later on. I know there was some discussion about it. Maybe next year with
She's
CFS.
Still at Iowa, right?
She's not. She actually left Iowa. She left Iowa this year, and I believe she came back to a regional university here in Las Vegas, I think, to be closer. I know she still wants to launch an MMA career. I don't know if that had anything to do with it as well. She's really good. She's really good.
He's really good. So can I tell you an interesting, we didn't get to talk last week, but
let's hear it.
I just came off this. I told you before I had like 5 straight weeks of reffing, right? It was very heavy. I did games in MMA, did some regional ones. And then luckily I ended one just last week, very close to home here in Memphis, Tennessee, a new upstart promotion called Trogon MMA, right? It was a pro-Ami card. And it was at Minglewood Hall, great venue, ruckus crowd. I mean, they probably had a couple thousand people in there. It was a great, great crowd. Maybe 1,000 people, but that's really good for a regional promotion. Now with these pro-Ami cards, the matchmaking early, it's hit or miss, right?
Yeah, because it's tough. You don't really know.
The second fight of the night, a kid gets into the cage and he's wearing basketball shorts. Okay. That should be your first indicator, right?
Okay.
Now, it's illegal to have pockets, but I'm almost like, okay, I don't think this one's going to last very long anyways. And ISKA didn't stop it getting in the cage, which ISKA usually regulates the amateurs before the State Athletic Commission regulates the pros. So just so you guys know, nobody stopped him. And so I'm like, okay, this isn't really my job to stop it now. Yeah, I'm the arbiter of the fight, but it's the second fight of the night. We're gonna let it go on. Then I'm like, wait, what is in his pockets? So right before I was about to say fight, I go in and I go, what's in your pockets? And he was like, huh? And I grab on the outside. There's clearly stuff in his pockets. And I reach in, pull out a cell phone. Hold on, John. It gets worse. I pull out a lighter. And I pull out a blunt. The cell phone lighter and a blunt out of his shorts pockets. He is in the cage. He's already been introduced.
Oh my God. Oh man, dude, I've been around this sport for a long time. I have never heard that one before. That is
probably ref 500, 600, 700 fights at this point. Who knows how many? I mean, a lot of fights. I've seen people get into the cage without their mouthpiece, without their cups. Oh, they forgot this, that, and the other, whatever. I've never seen I've never taken a bull. And one, you shouldn't have pockets in the cage, but this kid did. I took a blunt out of his pocket. So
what happens at that point? Do you just hand the stuff over to his corner?
I opened the cage door. I threw it out. Say, you ready? You ready? He got taken down and choked in 20 seconds.
Oh, it's almost as if he wasn't prepared for that fight. That is. Yeah.
It was almost like they found him off in the parking lot outside. I don't know.
That is one of the craziest stories I've ever. I love that we still have some crazy regional MMA stories, though, right? You know what I mean? Look, this sport, it's not that long ago that it was all the Wild West. You know what I mean? And it's progressed in a lot. You know, it's progressed very quickly. And the bar continues to raise, but it's a little bit of craziness every now and then. It's still funny to hear. That is wild. That is wild.
Yeah, man. Memphis is going to Memphis, baby.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we know what you got going on this weekend. Yep. I'm just going to be watching UFC 310. I'm excited for it. So, you know, my ASU Sun Devils are in the Big 12 championship game as well on Saturday. So I got a full Saturday planned. I'm pumped.
That's fantastic, man. I didn't realize they made it there. Some crazy college football. I don't watch a lot of college football. With there not being a lot of MMA on this past Saturday, watching a lot of college football. There was some MMA going on in those college football fields this past weekend. It was great to see.
Dude, the cops at the Ohio State-Michigan game was macing players.
That's unbelievable. That's absolutely unbelievable. Wild. I forgot. Are we still soft circling January 22nd in Columbia, Missouri for you to make it out for the Arizona State University versus Mizzou?
Yes, we are. I'd love to go to that. Yes.
You should come out there for that.
Look up where I could get into the venue.
I think we can make that happen for you, bro. I know some people over there at CFFC Match Day.
Yeah, that actually. What date is that again?
January 22nd, which I believe is like a Tuesday, maybe or something. So the grid schedule.
Arizona State, that is a great duel,
right?
Wow,
that'd be fun to see out there, man. We had a good one this past week as well, man. We got to see a reigning national champion and a two-time national champion as well, and Keegan O'Toole and Parker Kekais, and Ben Askren. Just being out there with Ben Askren, man, what a well-respected dude that is. So, CFFC Match Day season's been fun. So, if you haven't given it a shot and you want to see, I mean, you're going to see the number 2 ranked team in the country this Friday. So, a lot of John Morgan on UFC Fight Pass if you're around this week. Wednesday night with Tough Enough. Friday night with CFFC Match Day. So, yeah, and then I'll be back Cageside for UFC 310.
And then Monday, Cageside with John Morgan. Well, with that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.